and a very warm welcome to one another session of our Bilva Festival. So we at Damaru invite you to this annual yoga festival Bilva that we celebrate every July. I am Mauli, founder and executive director of Damaru Yoga and Sound Therapy Studio. And every year, when we do this annual festival, we choose different themes mainly related to the Indian yogic traditions and the knowledge systems, and invite scholars from across the globe to share their knowledge with us. Last year, Bilva's theme was cultural appropriation of yoga and necessity to embrace the inherent Indianness of the yogic tradition. This year, Bilva Festival is celebrating the great teacher and guru, Acharya, Sri T Krishnamacharya, and his holistic teachings in the 𝐀𝐽 tradition as taught by his lifetime student and son, Sri T.K.V. Desikachar. And there's a reason why we have chosen this theme for Bilva this year. So I'm very happy to share that this year, in the coming September, Damaru is announcing its teacher training program, and it is in collaboration with Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. And for those of you who would be interested in this program, after this session, we will also be doing a short video clip where the director of 𝐀𝐽 will be talking to you, sharing more details about this program. But for now, let us come back to this format. And before I introduce you to today's speaker, let me also share with you that this yoga festival, Bilva, is conducted under the wing of Damaru Foundation, which is a public charitable trust founded with the aim to promote and implement traditional yogic sciences and increase the awareness about wellness and harmony in that segment of society which is in dire need of help for their holistic well-being but may not be able to afford it. So, if you wish to support our efforts, consider contributing to the Damaru Foundation. You can find the details in the description box below. And your contributions will help us support more such people and at the same time allow us to bring more such valuable content and scholarly speakers from across the globe to share their knowledge with us. So, with this brief introduction to Bilva Festival and our upcoming teacher training program in yoga, I would love to invite our speaker for today, Mr. A.V. Balasubramanian. Namaskaram, sir. Welcome. Very warm welcome. So, before I hand over the session to Sir, I will again very briefly introduce him to our listeners, our audiences. Sri A.V. Balasubramanian came to Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram as a student in early 1980s and studied with Mr. R. Prabhakar and Sri T.K.V. Desikachar. He was also a teacher at 𝐀𝐽 for a short period and continued to be involved in the works of 𝐀𝐽 as an editor for the journal Darshanam. And for the first 2 years, he was editing this journal, and the beautiful content we still are getting from Darshanam. Currently, he is the member of Board of Studies of 𝐀𝐽. He continued to learn with Sri Desikachar. He is a biologist by training and has been involved in many institutions, projects, and efforts related to various aspects of Indian knowledge systems, particularly the traditional Indian sciences and technologies. Currently, he is the director of Center for Indian Knowledge Systems (CIKS), which was founded by him in 1995, an institution which is devoted to exploring and developing the current relevance and applications of traditional Indian knowledge systems with a specific focus on sustainable agriculture. So this was a short introduction about him, but when I was introduced to him through Miss Ritya, the the main thing that she came across is that you should meet Balu sir as a beautiful, wonderful human being first. So I'm grateful, sir, that you are giving your time and sharing your knowledge with us today. Um, I will just open the session because you have been learning with Desikachar sir since 1980s. It's a long time. So, if you could talk about sir, especially your interactions with sir and how you came to in contact with him or how you started learning from him.
Thank you very much. I think it's a great privilege as well as an honor to be part of this session. I'm very happy and all good wishes that you are starting out in a venture to take the message of Krishnamacharya, Desikachar, and Yoga Mandiram to areas, geographic areas which may not have been exposed to his teaching till now. There is an ancient saying that is told to yoga students or students of many shastras saying, Acharya Vamsho Gneha. One should know the lineage or the teaching lineage of the Acharya from whom one learned. So it is but apt that you should dedicate this session to the teaching as well as the memory of Sri Desikachar. As you said, it was a great privilege and honor, and I started studying with him in the early 1980s. So I'd like to take this opportunity to reflect on a few matters. First of all, how Sri Desikachar was as a teacher, what it meant to observe students. In fact, one of the very first things that one learned being with him was what it means to observe a student who comes in and seeks some help or care with you. One of the very early days in the evening, towards 6 o'clock, we thought we were through with all students. And then Desikachar peeped out of the consultation room and there were 3 or 4 people waiting. He came to me and said, Balu, do you have time to accept any more students? Looks like we have a couple of asthmatics. I was really very intrigued because he just peeped out for maybe 2 seconds and came back. I was wondering how on earth would he figure out something like this, so I decided, determined to stay on. Sure enough, I found that when we interviewed and had case sheets taken down of those students, indeed there were 2 students who came to seek care because they were having a problem with asthma. Much later, I realized that sometimes you get a hint of how a person may be asthmatic once they start speaking, the rhythm of the words, how they breathe. But even otherwise, sometimes they develop over a period of time a typical what we call as a barrel chest appearance. They can inhale but not exhale completely or thoroughly. So, one of the earliest lessons is how we can observe because people who are in trouble they come to you because they have a problem. They don't necessarily express themselves very well or very completely. So, it's essential that whatever that you hear, you also complement their observation and take a good look at what they are. In fact, a couple of years after that, I had a very humbling experience. I was engaged to marry this young woman, Vijayalakshmi, who was also a student and later on a teacher at Yoga Mandiram. She had been, I had known her for about 3 to 4 years. We've been seeing each other for 4 years. She had a back problem. So I told her to come for a consultation to Yoga Mandiram. And I told Desikachar, look, I am bringing this young woman over for a consultation. I also want to introduce you to her to you because we are going to get married. So Desikachar said, fine. We sat across the table with the case sheet in between us. Vijayalakshmi stood at the door. Desikachar turned his head towards her for just a second and said, Vama, okay, come sit down. And in the case sheet in front of him, immediately marked 1 foot flat. 1 foot flat. It just took a slight glance. I was quite mortified and ashamed because I had known her for 3 to 4 years and I had not really observed that she had the slight flatness of foot. This has implications for possible back pain or susceptibility to back problems. So it's very essential that one should take a keen look and observe. And this observation is not just with students, but it's essential that one should observe oneself, even as part of one's practice. In those days in Yoga Mandiram, all the teachers once a week, we used to have a session called Difficult Postures class. Desikachar used to meet all the teachers. And these days, in deference to various practical requirements, we modified and adapt the asana so much that sometimes some of us have even lost track of what are the original rigorous asanas as defined in a text like Hatha Pradipika or Shiva Samhita. So the Desikachar used to have this session of difficult postures. Now there are teachers who are flexible, teachers who are less flexible, and teachers who are very rigid and stiff. I put myself in the category of one of those teachers who was not flexible at all. So whenever he called for a lecture demonstration of some difficult asanas, I would be resigned that I would never be called. So one day he was discussing various kind of variations of Shirsasana, and then he was talking about a type of Salamba Shirsasana. Suddenly he looked towards me and said, Balu Ingiva, which means Balu Ajo, come here. I was taken aback and he said, Sir, you're calling me? Ama sir, நீங்க தானே Balasubramanian இங்க வாங்க. He said, yes, says Aja. And then he's asked me to get into Sirsasana. He supported me a bit and he demonstrated to the whole class, and to my surprise, that there is a Salamba Sirsasana in which I could comfortably stay and breathe for several breaths. I was left totally shocked. That is a big lesson to me. I don't think we should crudely just classify ourselves as we are stiff or we are flexible or this and that. Every single posture places some demands in terms of the strength is required somewhere, flexibility is required somewhere, a kind of an agility is required to get into the asana, a kind of a skill is required to get back from the asana into normalcy. So we have to observe ourselves in every case. So I learned from that I need to observe myself. I can't just put myself in a box saying that I'm stiff or I'm not flexible. The reverse could also happen. Sometimes people are so good and flexible at doing some asanas that they think that they can do everything and they discover something to their great shock. There was a young American woman who was a serious student who learned with him for a few years. And then one day came, she learned Mahamudra, and she was shocked to find that she could not stay and breathe for about 8 breaths in Mahamudra. She was so flexible that she had taken her body for granted. Mahamudra is an important posture. It's not just an asana, it's also mudra. One must be able to stay and breathe in it comfortably. And here was a young woman who was so flexible, who could do a variety of things. She took her body for granted and she went to a shock when she found that she could not stay and breathe in Mahamudra for 8 breaths. So this is just to say that observation is of paramount importance. You must be able to observe your students carefully. You must be able to observe yourself carefully. And you must also be able to observe various changes, various modifications. This is one of the first prerequisites, a requirement as a yoga teacher. Some may have a bit of a natural aptitude for it. If you don't have it strong as a natural aptitude, you have to develop it over a period of time. This was one of the first early lessons that I learned from Desikachar in terms of dealing with the students. One of the other important things that I learned from him was that very often students come to you with a variety of samskaras. Not everybody comes to Yoga Mandiram or to you for the first time, seeking a first exposure to yoga. Many times they have read books. These days, people have seen videos, they have seen TV shows, they have attended sessions, they've gone to various other teachers, and they carry a certain type of, I wouldn't use the word baggage in a very negative sense, they carry certain samskaras with them. So, the most important thing is you cannot demand of a student that you should come this way or come this way, come some other way. They come to you because they have a problem, they come to you because they have some trouble. You have to accept students as they are and wherever they are and see if you can help them on from there. Early in my yoga teaching career, I had a student who had read a book that was very popular in Tamil Nadu among the Tamil speaking public. There was a gentleman by name Thamizhvanan who wrote on a number of subjects and he also wrote in yoga. So, this student of mine had tried his best to practice yoga in the style that is taught by Dhammavan. I tried my best to introduce to him, to talk to him in various ways. One fine morning, he didn't turn up for the class. He left a note for me saying, "Sorry, sir, I'm not able to adapt to your style after having started in some other style, and I'm discontinuing my classes." This left me fairly depressed. I just thought, look, there was a problem. I must have dealt with this better. And I had an interesting opportunity to revisit something like this a few months later. We had an interesting case of a senior student from the United States. He was from California. He played the flute, flautist. He came to Chennai to spend a few months or maybe even a year to learn playing flute from one of the senior flautists of the Carnatic music tradition. It so happened that this person, when he was in the United States, he had already trained in yoga in a particular tradition. So he was assigned to learn with the senior teacher in Krishnamacharya Gundram. The senior teacher reviewed what he had done and he said, "Look, we'll teach you in Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram in a different style. Point number one, you have to forget everything that you have learned till now." Now, this student was very deeply disturbed. He came to his consultant and through him reached out to Desikachar and said, "Look, I'm willing to take it that Yogamdram has something important to offer. I'm willing to even accept that can give me something which I didn't get from my previous teaching. But if you tell me that I have to forget everything, that's not only I feel not correct, but it's also disrespectful to the previous teachers who taught me with so much sincerity. Man, don't tell me to forget anything. Can you help me?" So Deskachar called me, gave me this background, reassigned a teacher. He shifted him out to the teacher who was assigned to teach him. This is done not often but rarely in Yogamudra. He assigned the student to me and then he said, "These are your instructions. You can teach him whatever you think is suitable in the Mandaram tradition. Don't comment critically or run down what he has learned earlier. If you want to know what he has already learned, as a matter of information, you can ask him what is it that he has learned. But don't comment anything about it. Start from where he is and take him step by step." This turned out to be very interesting as an exercise for him as well as for me. Initially, I knew that I could see that he could very comfortably get into some asanas like Utkatasana with perfectly flat feet on the ground, Adhomukha Svanasana. But then slowly I said, "Look, your breath seems to be out of control. Can you please exhale slowly? Count 8 times when you come down. Can you please exhale slowly? Count 6 times, hold your breath." The moment they introduced the element of breathing to be coordinated with movement, suddenly he realized that something was happening. He discovered an entirely new dimension to getting into postures, getting out of postures, staying in postures. Suddenly, it just sank into him that this is a very different style and manner of practicing yoga and doing yoga than what he had done before. But the important thing was this discovery was a discovery that he had made himself. I was not lecturing them from a superior viewpoint saying that you got to forget all that old stuff. I'm going to come to you with ultimate wisdom. No. It's something which he discovered himself. Gradually, he got the point in terms of how important it is to coordinate breathing with movement, how it can check or serve as a check against injuring yourself, and how it can lead to focusing attention closely on the asana that you're doing if you coordinate this with movement. No? This is something which is very important, and the basic message that I get from this, a very fundamental message, is that you have to accept and take students as they are. They come with varied backgrounds, they may carry their own baggage of samskaras and prejudices. Somebody comes to seek you for help, he is the correct person. You can't say that you can't be here, you have to be elsewhere. You have to be a different kind of a person. That is something that's very, very important. In fact, I feel that this kind of an acceptance that he has of people as they are also reflects one or two deep personal qualities that he had and he embodied as a teacher, which is very important. Certain personal qualities that I'll talk to you about. One of the important personal qualities was a great deal of openness and humility. He was very open. He knew that people come to yoga quite often, not as the first call, but sometimes as the last resort. They gone to an allopathy who's not able to help them. They gone to an Ayurvedic man who's not able to help them. They gone tried some home remedies, it has given some help. They've been to an astrologer who says something, and finally they come to yoga teachers seeking help. And then when they come to you, you have to listen to them with some humility. You have to listen to them with some openness. Because basically, we are here not to show off our superior wisdom, but to see how best you can help this person and how best you can help this person as a student. In fact, one of the most remarkable experiences that I have observed in Yoga Mudram of this kind of a partnership is around 1982-83, when I enrolled in Yoga Mandiram as a student, and a few years later, I observed that there is a leading psychologist by name Dr. Jayachandran who is working closely and collaborating with Yoga Mandiram. Dr. Jayachandran may be known to some of the old Mandiram hands. He passed away just a few months back. He was a leading psychologist. He had a PhD in psychology, respected academically, and respected for his work with special children who are mentally retarded. And from his political background, he looked like he was generally from a political spectrum which was very critical of orthodoxy of a particular kind in Tamil Nadu. So I was very curious and I asked Jayachandran, how on earth did you get to work with Mandiram or get into a partnership with Yoga Mandiram? And he told me a very fascinating story. He had done his PhD in psychology and he was started a non-profit organization to help train teachers for special children. He said a few years before this conversation happened between us, he had gone to an international conference on special children teaching mental retardation in Europe. There he encountered a German psychologist who came up to him and said, "What does yoga have to say about all this?" So Jayachandran was very surprised, looked blank, and said that I haven't thought about it. Why do you think what you call as yoga would have anything? And Jayachandran had no clue as to what he was talking. So the German psychologist said, "Look, yoga is a branch of learning in India which has produced texts dated back to at least a couple of millennia, which talks about mind, the nature of the human mind, its limitations, its strengths. I am sure that people who are trained in yoga must have some view on this." So Jayachandran was very thoughtful. He said, I haven't thought about it. Let me find out. Let me find out. Then he said he came back to Chennai and asked some people around. He got the list of three well known yoga teachers and he decided to go to them and ask. He said that the first two people whom he approached, he was totally disappointed because when he went to them and said, "Can yoga help in the case of mental retardation?" he felt that the two of them didn't have a deep understanding or didn't bother to understand what mental retardation is. In a very superficial way, they said, "Yes, he says no problem. He can completely take care of all mental retardation problems." So Jayachandran was not so convinced by that. Then the third person he came to was Desikachar. He came to Desikachar and said, "Can yoga help children or people who have mental retardation?" Desikachar listened to him and then said, "Look, there are people with a large number of problems who come to us seeking help. There are some cases in which we are able to help a lot. Few other cases we are able to help a little bit. I have no experience dealing with this category of people whom we are saying mental retardation. Why don't you do something? You please send us some of these people who you think need to be helped. We will see what you can do. And you tell us if yoga can help in those conditions." So then Jayachandran was very struck by the openness and the humility that is exhibited by this. Then he started sending children as well as some teachers, special teachers who are trained to teach children who have special needs. And over a period of time, they developed a very remarkable partnership between Yoga Mandiram and psychologists, including Jayachandran. where they were able to do a lot of things to help children who have special needs, particularly by training teachers who have particular orientation for teaching children with this type of mental retardation. So this is something which is very remarkable, that he has a great deal of openness and a great deal of generosity. A great deal of generosity is also required, because once there is a collaboration, he doesn't bother a mind too much as to whether he gets the credit, someone else gets the credit, or who gets a major share of the credit, who claims that he
So,
has worked a
even
miracle of some
while you
kind
were
or other.
saying about his
It's
quality of,
something that's
sorry,
very
come.
important. Sorry, is that a question? I can't hear you, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but so while you were giving different incidences and instances, like you said, generosity, openness, at the same time, keen observation and acceptance. So he was different when it was with students, with care seekers, and with people with special needs. He would adapt and at the same time stay very, very open and accepting people from where they were.
Yeah.
I think that's a amazing quality that a teacher could display, and it's very
That's
difficult also at times. We tend to get judgmental, or sometimes because of we think we have years of experience, we immediately want to find solutions. So this kind of humility is rare, I feel.
Yeah, I think he also had a great deal of humility, which is important, because there are some areas where he has deep knowledge and great strength. And in other areas, if he feels that someone else has greater expertise or knowledge, he is open to listen, open to being corrected. For example, as you said in the introductory part of when you introduced me, we publishing a journal called Darshanam, in which I was the editor. And very often we used to invite him to write articles or we interviewed him. So he used to share with me drafts of some articles. I used to go through the articles and suggest a number of corrections. Some were grammatic, some were editorial. I always did with a great deal of hesitation, because he was such a senior person. And I was very junior and I was correcting his language. But he had no problems, no errors at all. He used to read through the corrections. In some places, in the name of editing, if I had changed the meaning of what he said, he was very quick to point it out and said, no, 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 that's not. But by and large, he would say, oh, that's good, Balu. I think the article reads much better. That's fine. Go ahead. It's what. He had no ads or no qualms about his being superior in everything. There are areas of great strength. There are areas where he felt that when editor suggested a better version of what he spoke, he was very open to accepting that. That's a very important part of his openness, is what I think. In fact, one other important aspect which made him a great teacher was his tendency to demystify. For example, Yoga Sutra, the basic text is in Sanskrit. There are commentaries, translations available in various Indian languages and, of course, in English. There are a number of technical terms that are used in the Yoga Sutra. Many of us used to feel that those technical terms have a particular import in Sanskrit which are very difficult to translate. A term like Shraddha, or a term like Antaranga Sadhana, Bahiranga Sadhana, what exactly that means. But what was very interesting is that some of us use those technical terms and try to explain it, because we feel that it conveys a richness, a depth which cannot be attained in other languages like English. Sometimes, let's admit, people also used to mystify things. They don't understand something properly, so they chant some slokas or sutras in Sanskrit to impress the audience and to hide their ignorance. Desikachar was never a man who did that. No. He could explain in very simple terms, in everyday English, even to people belonging to other cultures, some of the deepest and some of the most profound concepts that come from Yoga or Yoga Sutra. In fact, it reminded me of a very beautiful quotation that I think is attributed to Albert Einstein, which says that if you cannot explain something simply, it means you don't understand it deeply enough. He said, if you cannot explain something simply, it means you cannot understand it deeply enough. I found that some of the most profound and strong concepts of yoga is something that you used to be able to explain in everyday English. Or there is no Tamil, it is not very fluent, limited, but adequate Tamil without using the jargon of Yoga Sutra. Other thing is that etiquette is something that's very important. When you meet a student, the student has to be at ease. You cannot be judgmental with the student. People come to with a variety of problems. Sometimes people come are heavy smokers. There's no point just lecturing to them saying, look, smoking is very bad, you have to give it up immediately. In fact, Desikachar wrote in his wonderful book, Religiousness in Yoga, that every one of us knows that smoking is bad for health. Not just because the Surgeon General has determined that the smoking is bad for health, but through our own experience. But still, sometimes or often, we can't just drop a habit just because it's bad. Because there's a difference between an intellectual understanding and a realization that something is not doing any good and taking practical steps towards that. He said that if it's so easy for people to drop some bad habits, they don't even need the help of a teacher. You may want them to drop it, but sometimes getting rid of the habit may be the result of the yoga practice rather than a prerequisite or a precondition. For example, he said, there may be people who are under so much stress and tension that in order to relax, they reach out to a cigarette. You give them some simple course of asana and pranayama to help them to relax, to reduce their tension. And one day they may drop the cigarette by themselves. That's the result of the yoga practice and not as a prerequisite. So it's very important that when you accept people, you may recognize that some habits are not any good for them. You may even urge them or request them to get that they may get better if they shed those habits, but don't be very judgmental. Don't necessarily put them as prerequisites. Quite often, they may be the results of yoga practice. And it's very beautiful to see the correct etiquette that he observes with his students. One particular example I had is I used to learn classical Carnatic music with a teacher in Mylapore, who was at that time more than 70 years old. He had some back pain, and I felt that yoga could help him. So one day I came with him to Yoga Mandram with my music teacher and introduced him to Deshkachar, who greeted him very respectfully. Sometimes when Deshkachar meets a student, he doesn't want anyone else. So I was about to leave, Deshkachar waved me and said, stay. After a few minutes, Deshkachar suddenly looked at me and said, Balu, you can go for your class. I was really very mystified because I had no class. So I knew that Deshkachar for some reason just wanted me to move out. I was very curious to know what it is that he wanted to speak to my teacher after asking me to get out. Because it is not the correct etiquette to ask. At the end of the class, we took leave, and I was traveling with my music teacher, traveling in an auto rickshaw back to drop him at Mylapore. Music teacher turned to me and said, you must have wondered what he said to me. So I remained silent and smiled. My music teacher had the habit of taking a lot of pan and supari. At some point, Deshkachar felt that he has to gently admonish him, saying that for his particular age and condition, he should give up pan or supari or go slow on that. He thought it was not the correct etiquette that he should give this advice to the music teacher in the presence of Balu, who was a student. So he asked me to step out. So this is very interesting. You see, this is like an instruction from him as to what is the correct etiquette to be observed. You can point out some things to people, but then you have to do it in the correct way. You have to do it in a way that they don't feel ashamed, they don't feel humiliated, and they feel very comfortable with it. No? That's something that's very important. In terms of his contribution to the world or teaching of yoga itself, I would think that among the most important contributions, technically, what he made is the manner in which he would write down and communicate a course using the stick diagrams. There's no doubt that technically that is something which was his innovation, and he started with the students. He is not a person who would claim any intellectual credit of a particular kind or patent some such thing or a trademark some such thing, so everybody uses it. The other most important contribution is, in fact, Krishnamacharya, after a particular age, he didn't go outside India to teach anywhere. He didn't travel outside the shores of India, and used to say that if you have to interact with students, have students. You have to understand their cultural background, you have to understand their family background and where they come from. He said, I really do not have that kind of an understanding of the society or the culture of Europe or other places. So I don't think I want to travel outside India, I'll stay put here. Desikachar, starting from 1970s when he first made a trip to the United States for those series of lectures that he gave in Colgate University that is published as Religiousness in Yoga. He had rich interaction with the West. He was widely traveled. So he is a person who had an excellent understanding of how to communicate and take the message of yoga to the present day population and to the present day world. The bodies are changing, the mental attitude is changing, the emotional milieu is changing. How to adapt and make it suitable and make it something that is appropriate for this current day context, that is one of the greatest contributions. And he was very open to people used to come to him for partly taking treatment from allopathic physicians. Some people have gone to homeopaths. Some people have gone to Ayurvedic physicians. Some people are into Reiki. Some people are into pranic healing. They make a mixture of a variety of things in order to solve their current day problems. Very often, it used to be the case that if you sometimes go to a modern medical practitioner and say you're also taking allopathic, Ayurvedic treatment, they may scold you and say that, look, you do all kinds of things, you may get into trouble. Don't expect me to bail out of trouble. You feel guilty, make it a secret. It may also happen the other way. You go to an Ayurvedic physician who start in the declaration that if you are going to take antibiotics, painkillers, etc., don't come to me. You can get out. You come to me only if you are going to take only Ayurvedic medicine. Desikachar understood in a very deep sense and he empathized that in order to get rid of the problems that they had, people are seeking solutions, seeking help from a variety of sources. He was open to that. He was not critical. He was not at all discouraging. He encouraged openness and students to share because that's the way the communication is better, the trust is built much better. So that is one of his greatest contributions as well as the current day practice of yoga is concerned. And not only that, people are also into other forms of physical exercise. There are people who play tennis, there are people who do rowing, there are people who do jogging, there are people who do weightlifting, there are people who do gymnastics. When I first came to him in 1982 as a student, my background in physical training was every day in the morning I used to jog about 4 kilometers. So I asked, should I give that up? Should I give that up? So his advice is always that sometimes there are physical practices which create some imbalances in you. For example, if you're a cricketer and if you bowl with your right hand, there is a lateral asymmetry. Your right arms and shoulders, the musculature is developed much stronger than the left side. When you deliver the ball, all the weight comes onto your left knee. So there is an asymmetry. You should examine and see if yoga can help to correct those types of asymmetries and help. His idea was never to say stop this or that. If people are doing some kind of physical exercise, he felt is always better than a totally sedentary life when you do nothing. Let us see how we can help them. Let us see how we can sort out imbalances that are created there. That I think is one of the most remarkable and significant contributions of Desikachar for the day. And ultimately, I'd also, in conclusion, if I want to say a few words, Krishnamacharya, whenever he spoke about Shastras, he used to say there are types and types of Shastras. If you look at something like Brahma Sutras, that's a Jignasa Shastra. That is for knowledge sake and that's for learning. There are other Shastras which have a practical utility, what he calls as Prayojana Shastra. Vaidya Shastra is a Prayojana Shastra because it has a practical utility. Yoga Shastra is a Pravedana Shastra because it has a practical. It has to deliver goods. It has to make sure that you protect your health, you can improve your health. For that, you have to achieve practical results. So, you have to look at the practical milieu as it is changing. People are changing and evolving. How you can adapt yourself to that is very important. In fact, Krishnamacharya used to tell us that after a stint of studying for 7.5 years in Manasarovar, he asked his guru, Ram Mohan Brahmachari, what should my Guru Dakshina be? And Ram Mohan Brahmachari said, the only Dakshina I want is that you should spread the message of yoga. You should spread the message of yoga. There are lots and lots of people all around who can benefit from yoga, but they're not aware of its possibilities. They don't have a suitable teacher who can help them. Please reach out areas that are not reached and spread the message of yoga. And that is what he did throughout his life. In a sense, when Desikachar started Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, that is also to spread the message of yoga. I'm very happy to be part of this opening ceremony. I think essentially what yoga teacher Mauli is now doing is to see if this message of yoga that has been centered in the south, in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, can reach out places like Ahmedabad and Gujarat to spread the message of yoga. I'm delighted and honored to be invited to be part of this effort. All good wishes and prayers to our teachers for success in your endeavor. That's all I need to say. If there's anything specific you need to ask or tell me, please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, yes, pretty much you gave a overview of Desikachar sir as a teacher to students, as a therapist to the care seekers, or with people of other professions parallelly working in the field of healing. So many aspects of him you covered. Um, well, if you are okay, I would like to also know. So, what you essentially brought out were the qualities of him as a teacher. Uh, if we see ourselves today, like you said, there are a lot of samskaras from other schools of yoga or other systems of teaching yoga or so many other influences in today's day and time. What would we say for students like us? You talked about the qualities of a teacher. That sketchers through him, you actually brought about those qualities of openness, acceptance, generosity, keen observation, right etiquettes, and all. When we talk about aspiring teachers or students of yoga, what would you say for them? What is required in today's day and time, in today's contexts?
I think the most important single watchword as far as students are concerned is abhyasa or practice. There's no substitute for practice and practice and practice. Whenever I introduce a new student to Yoga Mandiram, sometimes they refer them or sometimes they take them. The only thing I say is that Yoga Mandiram will give you a class and he'll ask you to practice. Please practice. If in the course of your practice you get to some problem, you run short of breath, you feel that your back is strained, you feel that your knee has a pain, do not give up. Stop practice, go back to your teacher and say, look, I did this is what happened. They will guide you and find a way out of that. Sometimes you wake up one morning and realize that for the last 3 months, I have just forgotten practice for whatever reason. Don't feel ashamed. It happens to the greatest of practitioners. Go back to your teacher and say, look, I got out of practice, please help me. If you have a serious illness or an episode or an incident, don't blindly practice whatever you taught. Go back to your teacher and say. I think the only thing one can say is abhyasa, to practice and not lose touch with your guru. Sometimes people have a real problem saying that you talk about this guru, where can I find a guru? There are no gurus these days. They seem to be all inadequate in various ways. Here is a parampara that's still reaching out to you through teachers. So my only thing with students is that practice, do not give up practice at all. What do you do with the old samskaras or the negative samskaras? Yoga Sutra itself has a beautiful suggestion. In the first chapter of the Yoga Sutra, there's a very beautiful sutra which says Tajjas samskaraha anya samskara pratibandhi. If there are old samskaras that are weighing you down, don't get depressed, don't get bogged down analyzing it too much. Start new samskaras. Start new samskaras in the light of which the old samskaras will subside or fall in place. If somebody has a whole lot of problems, don't analyze it. Don't spend endless time analyzing the original problem. You just ask that you have all those problems, let it be. Can you give me 20 minutes of your time a day? Yes. Start with practice. There is a story that's said about the life of, I think it is Sant Kabir Das or Guru Nanak. On the board, he drew a small line and he said, "Can you make this line smaller?" So everybody came up with a piece of cloth and was about to rub off a particle line. He said, "No, don't touch that line. I want to make this line shorter." Nobody knew how this could be done. Then one student came and he near that line, he drew another line which was extremely tall. And he said, "Now it has become shorter." He said, "Yes. I think when you say that, what do you do with these old samskaras that are weighing you down? The modern psychotherapy approach seems to be trapping you too much in an analysis of the old samskaras. Such and such thing happened to you when you're a 2-year-old baby or a 6-year-old child, and that is the reason why you have such a terrible temper or a this or that, etc. That's okay, it may be so. What do you do about it today? It's the year 2022 July, and you're now 40 years old. Can you give me 20 minutes of your time? I'll get you started with some new samskaras. So, as far as the students are concerned, the only thing I have to say is that practice, abhyasa. Do not really give up on your practice. Be in touch with your teacher repeatedly. Samskaras, the only way the old samskaras will subside or fall in place is start new samskaras. And the greatest blessing that you people have is you're already in touch with a great and outstanding, vibrant tradition as that of Yogic Krishnamacharya. That's a great blessing for anybody to get started with. That's the only thing I have to say. Thank
Yeah, that I think you also imbibe that quality of making things very simple. Let's start today and draw a bigger line.
you.
Thank you so much, sir. Um, Really grateful that you're sharing your time with us today and so many insights about Desikachar sir, the smaller nuances that you could bring about because of so many years that you spent with him. So I think that kind of it's very valuable to us, those of us who have not had the we could not meet him. So I think through you all, we are knowing them more or living that kind of a thing in our minds to understand what kind of teachers they were. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing this knowledge today with us.
Thank you
Namaskar.
and all good wishes and prayers for your effort. Namaste.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us today. And evening today we have yet another session. So don't forget to log on to our channel and we will see you there. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Namaste everyone, a very warm welcome. Today we are very excited to announce teacher training program at Damaru. This teacher training is happening at Damaru in collaboration with Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. So I'm so happy to invite Ms. Nritya Jagannathan. She is the director of KYM Institute of Yoga Studies. And I just hand over to her because she's the best person to explain you what exactly we are getting into.
Sri Namaha, Namaskaram. On this occasion of Damaru's anniversary, it gives me great joy to announce on behalf of the KYM the upcoming Yoga Teacher Training Certificate Program offered by the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram in collaboration with Damaru Studios, Ahmedabad. This is the first time that this very intensive teacher training course comes to the western part of India at Ahmedabad. As many of you may be well aware, the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram is a world-renowned center founded by Sri T.K.V. Desikachar in 1976 as a tribute to his father, teacher, and legendary yogi Sri Krishnamacharya. Founded as primarily a center for yoga therapy, over the years, the KYM also has acquired fairly solid reputation for its training programs, both in yoga studies as also healing chants, as these are fundamental even to the process of application of yoga tools. In this context, Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram and Damaru come together to offer you this 800-hour yoga teacher training program. 800 hours is inclusive of both the classroom and non-classroom hours, including personal study, project preparations, assignments, observation, internship, and so on. This program follows a syllabus that has been designed by the Academic Council of KY, following very closely the guidelines laid down by Sri T.K.V. Desikachar when he first conceived this program. The syllabus includes a very deep study of the classical techniques of asana, classical techniques of pranayama, the theory of asana, the fundamental theoretical principles of asana, modifications of asanas to suit people of different capabilities, theory and practice of dhyanam, apart from which there is also certain associated study such as the history and evolution of yoga, a deep study of the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali covering all 4 chapters of the text, an exposure to other yoga literature such as the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga Rahasya and the Yoga Yajnavalkya Samhita. Apart from this, students will go through a study in certain allied subjects in every module of the training: fundamentals of anatomy and physiology, fundamentals of Ayurveda, and also an introduction to psychology. Apart from this, chanting of the Yoga Sutra will also be an integral part of the study modules. Now, this course requires, unlike many other short-term courses, is designed to run for a period of about 18 months in the hybrid mode. A big part of the learning will happen with teachers from the KYM teaching in person at Damaru Studio, Ahmedabad, with a portion of the subjects also being conducted online. Through the process of every module of training, there will be ongoing assessments, evaluations, discussions, and so on, culminating in a graduation where you will be certified. Those who graduate will be certified as yoga teachers in the tradition of the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. The Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram is one of the leading yoga institutes of India, recognized by the Yoga Certification Board under the Ministry of Ayush. And this level of training, this 800-hour teacher training course, will prepare students to be able to take the level 3 exam of the Yoga Certification Board. Also, this program is eligible to be recognized under the 500-hour Advanced Certificate Program of the Indian Yoga Association as well. And with these words, I would like to invite those of you who are interested in a deep, serious study of yoga philosophy, yoga psychology, its practice, and its application from a very reputed tradition, one that is known the world over, to go through this process, which not only helps you to qualify yourself as as a yoga teacher, as a teacher of yoga from a very reputed tradition, it can also offer much by way of reflective food for thought, offering a way to reflect on, to understand various life processes, to understand how the mind works, and through this understanding, to integrate the philosophy into our living, so to effect an overall transformation in our lives itself. And here I speak for so many hundreds of students, both Indian and international, who have gone through this training and who have benefited greatly from the value that this program can bring to you both professionally and personally. For further details, please do reach out to Mauli, who will be coordinating with us in running the course at Damaru. And with these words, I take your leave, and we look forward to having a very good registration for this program that the KYM is offering for the very first time at Ahmedabad. Thank you so much. Namaskar.
Thank you, ma'am. Gujarat welcomes the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram. The privilege is ours. A very ancient parampara is coming to this part of India. And I urge all of you to take advantage of that to get into an in-depth exploration of the yogic studies. All our contact details are there in the description box. DAMARU, www.damaru.in is our website. Realm of Damaru is our handle on Facebook, Instagram, and you will get all the details. So do reach out and register, because another aspect of this tradition is that we do not take trainings or trainees in large numbers. So there's a very limited amount of seats that we are offering for this training, so that we could get deeply involved. So get in touch and see you on the other side. Thank you.